Right, everybody, let's do the next bit. Right then, so we can have a chat now, I think, about what we've done, about the. I hope you're enjoying the film. It was a long time in making, and that's another one on please. Yeah, that'll do. It's going to be a question on today. So how it all started off with Thomas and myself is we kind of decided to go on a day out, well, a couple of days to the Lake District, didn't we? It was just after the first lockdown, and we got talking about the whole idea. Because people are always asking you like those questions. Why are they here? Oh, please, Jonathan. Yeah, cheers, mate. Thanks for that. Yeah. That's it. Yeah. So Thomas and I went to the Lake District. We started seeing the Asian sites. It was great to show you the sites. You'd never seen them before, but you knew the Irish ones, you didn't know the Lake District ones. So we had ideas and we started talking, and strangely enough, we kind of had the same ideas. So eventually, the whole film idea, the book idea, came from that.
Yeah, but the lockdown also played a big part in it, because I think, you know, Neil reached out to me during the lockdown, and we were both kind of like, what the hell is going on with the world, and there has to be more meaning to life than this, and it affected both our jobs and our work terribly, and it was almost like a therapeutic idea to go, I think, to the Lake District at first.
Definitely, yeah.
And then while we were there, he was saying, you know, are you interested in Atlantis? And I said, yeah, and I think it's these islands, or what's bits of it left out here. And then I said, I have the resource to make a film, would you like to do it? And then we started going around recording everywhere. That was really how it began.
Yeah, it was great fun, wasn't it? I mean, it was just like two guys in the opening, bit of filming, a few beers and a curry.
Yeah, and breaking the law. I snuck around the Irish border during the lockdown. You weren't supposed to pass the border. And it was a fantastic psychological thing for me too as well, to actually say, you didn't get me, you know, and it was that kind of thing. And it was a determination to complete this out of spite in me for many ways, because it was like, I don't need some bureaucrat telling me that the world is just this right now and always will be. You know, I was determined that it was not going to be their new normal, it was going to be ours. So that played a big part in this.
Yeah, it kind of grew from there, really, didn't it? And then there was the ideas that, well, I've always thought that Britain is a spiritual landscape in itself, and if you go over to Europe, you look at all the European megaliths, they're not saying that, apart from Malta, which is the same but different, most of them are just like the chambered tombs and then Bronze Age remains. So there's only really Britain and Ireland that have these incredible possessional ways. So that was kind of one of the main things that, for me, I wanted to.
Yeah, the ancient sites definitely feel different here. There's definitely, you know, they're in other countries, but there's something about England, Ireland, Scotland, and Wales, and you know, Orkney and Shetland, and there's something different going on. And a lot of it had to be. In fact, it was Aberdeen years ago, visiting the circus, the stones, long before I even knew Neil, that I realised that those stone circles had a kind of a symmetry. The Recumbent stone circles had a symmetry with the landscape. This was like an actor in the middle of a stage. So whoever built the British and Irish megaliths were almost like they had a sense of theatre.
Absolutely.
And that had to have come from a highly developed culture that would have had time to develop this concept of almost like a spiritual landscaping.
Yeah, it's the same sort of thing I'm trying to capture with photography, the fact that you've got the ancient site, and then that's kind of part of it, and then you've got the whole landscape around it that seems to be part of the site, like it's all one, it's all together. So, and when we went up to Orkney then, it all kind of clicked into place, didn't it, really?
Yeah, the thing with Orkney is, if you've never been there, you should go, because it's a paradox. You have probably the best megalithic infrastructure on these islands in a place that's tiny. In fact, the Nessa Brogner is basically like it's an isthmus. It connects two small old islands. On one side is a freshwater lake, on the other side is salt water. And that even alone has an alchemical kind of energy to it. And then the discoveries that are going on there at the moment, they've found there's so much that they can't even begin to release it. But they've actually even found things like a pyramid. There's huge amounts of rock art, and like literally every week the assumptions about the Neolithic Orkney gets blown out of the water. I mean, the Skara Brae was already mind-blowing to people, but now what's been discovered there has to be from a larger, greater landmass. So it's out in the Atlantic. What we're seeing is like, imagine if the United States sunk below the sea, and say Long Island and Catalina Island and bits of Florida remained, and you say, well, or even just parts of Manhattan Island, and you say, well, how did they build all these structures on just this one island? And you say, well, obviously there was a huge continent that supported the economic thing. Well, it's the same thing with Orkney. What you're seeing is like New York as if the United States had sunk and just New York, Manhattan Island remained.
Yeah, then the whole idea of whether we thought about Atlantis, it just seems to lead on naturally that why are all these people coming over here to go to in their thousands and tens of thousands to do these pilgrimages, and then Atlantis sort of comes out of it naturally, doesn't it? It's like, well, of course, yeah, that's why they're here. It's they're go visiting their homeland or remembrance of that homeland.
And I said to Neil that when we would do this film, I wasn't going to revisit the old thing that everyone else has done. And a big part of that for me was that everything that's ever illustrated, from a movie about Atlantis to a book cover, it's always Greco-Roman architecture. It's always Greco-Romans. And why? Just because of Plato's time. So they apply that aesthetic onto all of Atlantis. And that was a big thing for me. No, it's not going to be looking like ancient Greece or ancient Rome. It's going to look like something else altogether. And this is where the anomalies of these islands came in, the Brochs in Scotland, the Round Towers of Ireland, and lots of other things, that not only just buildings and infrastructure, but also the things like the Mace Head and Nowth and those Scottish stone spears. There was just too many smoking guns. And these obviously came from a technology prior to what we're told is the current Neolithic, that was actually higher up, that was actually more advanced. So we see that all over the world, don't we? Like, it's a very common thing, that there had to have been a cataclysm that caused this all to be lost. And it may sound fantastic, like you say, like, how could you have an ancient complex society where everything has been completely lost? I can guarantee you, if something happened all of this whole world tomorrow, and there really was a killer virus or something, or an asteroid, you would, in no time, I would guarantee you, there'd be very few traces of humanity left. Everything from plastics to buildings, the buildings would all crumble after a while. There'd be a few anomalies. They'd find the inside of a printed circuit board all rusted away, and they would say, was this was some kind of religious object?
Yeah, that's right.
You know, you'd be amazed how. I mean, I used to live in this place in New York. There was a comic book store at the end of a corner, and it burned down. And by the following summer, it was a forest. You would have never known it was there. Now multiply that by 100. It's just a couple of centuries.
Yeah, it's sort of Pompeian thing.
Yeah.
So that's how it all came about. Should we go to questions?
Yeah. Anyone has any questions about the film or Atlantis or anything?
I'll give you the mic.
Yeah, thank you for doing that. It was brilliant. I'm sure everybody else has enjoyed that as well. Do you think it's connected to the landmass that's off the Fylde coast as well, which is very not so deep underneath the water there? I think they put a wind farm on there now.
Which landmass is that?
Fylde coast.
Where's that now?
That's Blackpool, yeah. So that's when the water levels rose. They would have flooded that area, so that would have been the way across. You walk to the Isle of Man.
There's a lot of ancient things there.
Yeah. Oh, okay, yeah. If you look at the old maps, the pre-glacial maps, that's all connected by now. I didn't know the name of that. Yeah, there's also Doggerland on the other side, between England and Denmark, and we know now that that was a vast, well-populated landscape, because they've actually been taken. The biggest source of ivory for years was actually mammoth tusks that were taken by fishermen off the bottom of that. And they often found bones and stuff that had cuts and carvings on them, suggesting that they had encountered humans that had weapons, you know, knives and stuff.
Hi. First of all, the film, fantastic.
Yes.
During the film, there was a part where you went into like an area where you went through a tunnel. What was
I
the
think
name?
that was...
West Kennett.
Yeah, that was West Kennett Longbarrow.
Yeah, what I'd say there is, it's very similar when you go to Luxor in Egypt and you go to the Sphinx. You go through a very similar kind of, architecturally it looks similar, where you go along a path and then through a, you know, like through a doorway, like you did on that.
I'm just trying to remember, I went to the Sphinx years ago.
Yeah, the Sphinx, yeah, when you
Yeah,
go,
yeah,
not the pyramids, when you go actually go to the Sphinx.
Yeah.
So it's always been said that the ancient Egyptians were descended from the Atlanteans, which would make sense that they were here also, yeah?
Well, I absolutely agree, and in some ways it's a bit different. Yes, they definitely knew about them, they had contacts, they were probably connected to them, but there's an even more interesting group in Africa called the Dogon, who Robert Temple wrote a fantastic book about them in the 70s, I think it was, called The Sirius Mystery. And these people knew that Sirius had a twin star orbiting, and they knew the exact trajectory of the orbit. Now, there's only one thing there. They either had spaceships or that twin was brighter in the sky at one time. And they described themselves as being the intermediate race between a previous civilization and Egypt. So there's lots of stuff like that there. There's the Aztecs didn't build those pyramids. They're built by a group called the Toltec. Who are the Toltec? You know, there's, I mean, it's really quite remarkable how much archaeology doesn't really have a complete story to it. But yet we're never really told that in school or anything, you know, on the BBC or anywhere like that.
What are your thoughts on the seamount Porcupine Bank off Ireland's west coast?
Yeah.
Is that linked in also to the fact that the majority of megalithic rock art
Yeah.
is in the west coast of Ireland?
The Porcupine Bank. Well, you see, the thing is, the anomaly there again. More west you go in Ireland. I'll be doing a talk tomorrow on the Sligo megaliths. The older they get, so that makes no sense in terms of this east-west thing that we've all been raised with in school, out of Babylon, out of Samaria, that kind of thing. The Porcupine Bank is not that far underwater. It's really not that deep down at all. So it would probably be like High Brazil. And I do think there's a lot of veracity to the concept that those solar flares may have caused earthquakes in that area that finally initially took down the main island of Atlantis, and then for years afterwards you're going to have the Porcupine Bank and what they call High Brazil, Rock Hall, those kinds of places. And then that solar flare of 1870 probably took down the last remains of it. Because geologically the ground there is very unstable. It's under the Porcupine Bank, under Rock Hall. So yeah, absolutely. I would not be surprised if they one day were dredging down there one day and they pulled up a megalith or something. It wouldn't surprise me in the least. Just like Doggerland on the other side here.
Hello. Yeah, a comment initially. Yeah, I guess we all got a bit of Neanderthal inside us. Does that not mean we've all got a little bit of Atlantean DNA inside us?
Well, is this the recurring dreams? You know, is this where we all... hands up how many people have had recurring dreams about tidal waves? I bet nearly everyone, right? It's so common. Now, you went to a psychology class, I remember years ago, taking a psychology class in Dublin, and everything was like, oh, those tidal waves, they represent repressed and sexual remote, you know, all the usual stuff you hit with. And I said, no, there's something deeper to it than that. And I think that could be part of it. I think we can... You see, this is also another thing. We carry with us as the genetic memories of our ancestors. Now, we know the cellular memories carry on through organ transplants. Why not genetic memories? Why not them travelling through the thing? And especially something as traumatic as most of your species being wiped out.
Yeah, the question was, you might remember from our talks last year, we were very much into what do we do with all this knowledge. We've got to do something with it, you know, the clock's ticking, etc. Do you feel the more we study and discover and look into Atlantis, that will lead perhaps to a consciousness change in us as we connect with that? And also, do you have a feeling that there's any technologies from the Atlantean times that we will discover, or perhaps even, how about this, that we're using today?
Yeah, that's great questions. Consciousness change, absolutely, no doubt about that. One thing I was struck by, even when you look at Egypt or anything like that, they were different. They were not like us. They were a different kind of people. So human consciousness has definitely changed at several times. Even the whole, like you have people, one of the things that annoys me about megaliths is that you have people try to apply things like pi and Greco-Roman mathematics to something that was built long before, you know, Archimedes and people like this. And so that always kind of irritated me a little bit. They had a whole different way of dealing with technology, engineering and science that was rooted in a very different consciousness that probably wouldn't have even used the same kind of what we call, you know, laws of science that we use. Absolutely, I totally and completely believe that. It's the only thing that explains how they were able to move colossal pieces of stone like Baalbek and just everywhere, you know, easily. There was definitely a different consciousness. Will we discover it again? Yeah, I think it's been discovered bits and pieces. I think Tesla got kind of close to some of it. There was a Japanese gentleman called Dr. Emoto that showed that water had a memory. Now, this, if you can actually put, and now scientists are talking, the same scientists that trashed his theories are now saying they could store data inside water. See, this is the whole thing. You know, he was on the ball, but then he said, how could water have a memory? And now they're actually building hard drives, computer hard drives using water. So you've already machined and mechanized water. Therefore, you can do that. You can do that. The hydrogen and oxygen molecules. Therefore, you can do it to molecular structures and everything. You can liquefy stone. You can raise it. You can use sound. So it'll be all those things. It's just like what Crowley said, that scientists discover bits and pieces of magic now and again and pat themselves on the back for it. But it was the ancients already knew it. I do believe that totally.
Congratulations again, guys, on a brilliant film.
Thanks very much.
Is science catching up with mythology in regards of things that have come to light, such as the Younger Dryas event?
Yeah. And I tell you one thing, mythology is much more than the stories of the age. Mythology is almost like a complementary form of like consciousness software that works in tandem with it. Joseph Campbell, the American mythologist and comparative mythologist, always said that the problem with the industrialized man was he didn't have a mythology to actually complement his rapid increase in technology. But that's kind of happening now. I see that all the time. There's kind of like mythologies building up on the internet through things like memes. I'm seeing it's almost like a chaos magic thing or something. But absolutely, mythology is far more than stories we make up to understand the world we live in. It's almost like the mythology exists in tandem with us. And I think absolutely, I think, you know, I can definitely see it happening, especially now as they're trying to make us less human. You know, that's definitely true.
Yeah. Any more questions?
With regard, you're talking about raises in consciousness, and also the solar flares, which will have an electromagnetic vibration effect on the human consciousness. Perhaps linking that with the way the mainstream news media reports events to reduce people's conscious vibration, connection with spirit or whatever. And also, in the recent days with Elizabeth dying, and we're going to get Charles as king, and the implications of that might be on public consciousness, and also the possibility that the new king would be crowned. Where did those stones come from, and what is in the crown? Where did the vibrational energy of the effect of the consciousness of the greater population, the great unwashed, as I know Thomas likes to call them in his videos, because considering most people here will have an understanding of the effects of what I've just said regarding the statement, he will take on the crown, the vibration energy of those stones, and the effect of the news media, which tries to reduce us back to the material rather than the etheric. How do you think that's going to work?
It's a circular reaction, isn't it, all the time? I think the royals they've got to be part of they are the elite, aren't they? These are the people that we tend to think are gathering together the information that they have. That would have been their their physics, and it's our magic. Yeah. And in tandem, we've got, as you say, we've got the news trying to dumb any understanding of it down. So it's like a two-pronged attack, isn't it?
Yeah. See, on Thomas's last video, he mentioned, will this be the last notes? Will they ever print notes with Charles's face on? I follow economics globally quite carefully to see the trajectories of where we might be headed with cashless societies, World Economic Forum, and how they're using black magic through the news media and manipulation of currency. Now, I read a report last night that there's 1.5 trillion worth of derivatives stacked against the energy markets because the ECB won't issue short-term loans to energy companies. Well, energy is vibrational through electricity. So again, it's control of energies. Money is energy as stored human labour. And so people sort of say, well, I've worked for that now, I've lost it all, and it's reducing you all to the material. Whereas if you can break out of that trap, then you can expand. So perhaps that's a way of keeping us from the Atlantis technology.
Quick question to you. Do you think that the central digital currency is going to happen soon? Is it inevitable, do you think?
That's a tricky one. I mean, it could happen by the end of the month, or it might collapse by the end of the month. Who knows?
I don't think coins will ever go out of circulation.
Yeah.
I think even if they went full digital, I think they would still keep like a pound coin or a euro coin in circulation or a dollar coin. I'll tell you why. That thing is full of sigils and seals. And every time, like I give a pound to you, you spend that for a pound. There's a magical increase there, but you go and buy something with that, it's really down £2. Okay? And when you have the Queen's head on that, or the head of the state or the country or whatever, that's directly charged into the power of the state. So, and there's something about the passing of the coin is very esoteric. But what you said about the jewels in the crown and all that, you see, well, we tend to think of technology as being things like steam pumps, reservoirs, you know, electrons flowing through a copper wire, all this kind of stuff, right? Energized gases to make light and so on. But that's only one bandwidth of technology. I'm sure everybody in this room is aware that crystals have remarkable power.
There's research to suggest that
big time.
Engagement
You've had a headache or something. Well, what do you think the crowns are full of? What do you think all those diamonds and jewels are doing? They're actually performing some kind of transmutive function. They have to be. And the crown, even the way they have the Maltese cross on the top, it looks like an antenna, right? And then the scepters look like an antenna, and suddenly it starts looking very esoteric immediately. And so I think the Rex Deus that you talk about, they operate here, and we're down here, and we're told that down here is all there is. I really do believe that. What you're basically is saying that there's no such thing as the material reductionist universe, and it all has a kind of a function rooted in consciousness, and basically everything is alive. Well, congratulations, you're a good pagan there. But yes, absolutely. There's, you know, even the concepts in science of discovery, almost nothing has been discovered in a lab by people with white coats. It's all been the eureka moment. And that's just like an artist. Like, there's a book called, I think it's called Eureka or something like that, and it shows that every major discovery in science in the last century was a guy having a bat, a woman riding a bicycle, someone out at the pub, and it just popped into her head. It wasn't teams of people inside a laboratory working on individual things. And in fact, I think that's half the reason they do that, is to try and destroy these kind of controls. Mozart spoke about, where did the music come from? Well, it's already there. I just pull it out of the stream. It's like a river, and I pulled my symphonies out of it. Well, I've got news for you. The technology works exactly the same way. It's just, again, they don't want us to know it. If you want to know what black magic is, look at Wuhan. Look at all these white coats, and look at all these bureaucrats. They're the black magicians of our days, and they are not rooted in anything that's helpful. They're creating bamboozles and everything like that to destroy us as a species. And like what you're saying is absolutely what we are. And people say, you know, it's very new age. You say we're more in touch with nature. I'd say we're more in touch with our consciousness. Our consciousness, I believe, is the actual operating software that runs the universe. Have you ever been in a car accident and the car jumped over the lane and was coming towards you or something like that? Time seems to slow down. I'm absolutely convinced that it's just your brain changing time speed to give you a chance to get out of the way. Absolutely convinced of it. So there you go. It is like that.
Just go ahead.
make sure I got the mic turned on first. It's a question to both of you, really. I can't remember, Neil, how long you've been doing this, but I guess it's probably somewhere between 10 and 20 years.
Yeah, about over 20 years. Yeah.
It'll be similar for Thomas, particularly in Ireland. I was wondering, as you were travelling around the UK and going to these particular sites, were you able to feel changes in vibrational frequency? Did that kind of thing happen to you? Did you feel those energies?
Do you mean changes from now to previously? Or?
No, just when you go to those particular sites. So, sorry, when you're here,
yeah,
you're going to feel a particular kind of energy.
Yeah.
When you go to the sites, do you feel different? Do you feel like there's a different type of vibrational frequency?
Yeah.
Do you think there's a change in radiation levels, those sorts of things? Have you done any proper investigations?
Yeah, I don't know if it's radiation, what it is, but definitely feel different energies at the sites, without a doubt. Yeah, and I think there are the electrical energies, because the whole idea of a sine wave, if you see the stones can be sent on a positive and negative side, and this you can measure it, or you can dowse it, you can measure it in whatever meters you've got to remember the name of them. But then if you think you've got a stone circle is one way up, and then you've got the next stone is the next way up, and vice versa, you've actually got a sine wave, if you think about it, going round. And yes, I can feel them. I used to get the little.
So do you think it may have to have been set up toroidal fields?
Say that again, sorry?
I think it may have been setting up toroidal fields.
Quite possibly, yeah. And I think a lot of the energies you can feel as well are from the earth, and also that I do believe quite strongly that people walking up and down a path will leave that energy, and it can be picked up later. You heard anything?
Yeah, there was a Scottish eccentric called John Foster Forbes. He was actually a genius, really. And he used to go around Britain in the 1930s with a little band that were like something out of an Ealing comedy, and including a character called Miss Eliza Pixley, who was the human television set. And what they did was they would do like the stone tape effect, where they would look for echoes of the past in the stones. Very interesting stuff. And sometimes, and this has happened to me, among the New Agey type people, the stones, that beautiful vibration, man, I'm in touch with the ancestors and all this. I've had terrible experiences at stone circles. I was nearly killed by one in Sardinia, where I felt like, honest to God, a hole had been drilled in the bottom of my leg and my life energy was pouring out of me. So these things do have the memories of what went on them. And I wondered if that one and the dark ones, in fact, John Foster Forbes said that there are certain stone circles in Aberdeenshire, where he was from, that as a little boy, he was told that certain occultists in the area, this would be the late 1800s, early 1900s, were doing things to little boys like you, and that's why the stone circle felt so bad. So yeah, I do believe that landscapes like battlefields and stuff, and as well as stones, contain memory. I have no doubt about that. Absolutely none at all.
Hi, I've just got a quick question. Brilliant film, by the way. Towards the end of the film, you were talking about the families and the possessions, and earlier on in the film, you were talking about the processional routes at Avebury and places like that. We're going to have loads of processions now, aren't we, because of the Queen dying? And I was just wondering what the significance was of the processions in the past, the Atlantean, and how it continues now.
I think they're exactly the same thing. It's just we're just seeing it in a different place. And I'm positive they know exactly why they do the same thing. Because you can see it going. They'll start off at maybe Westminster Abbey, and they'll have a processional way to somewhere else. But what's the difference, really? It's just the same thing, isn't it? But it's just so much better that we can recognise it. I mean, the whole idea of the book really was to present more questions, to get to lead the whole subject on a little bit further.
Yeah, we wanted to begin a new conversation on this topic, because we didn't say, look, we know this, we have the answers. Of course we don't. But like, here's another tangent. Even like things from Neil's theories about processions to mine about it wasn't Greco-Roman architecture. Suddenly that's, whoa, we have a whole new thing, and it will move off in a different direction.
And that idea of that's amazing what you said there. I hadn't thought about that, but yeah, that is bob on, isn't it? All these possessions we're going to get. So,
oh, if you have esoteric eyes, the next 2 weeks in Britain will be amazing. You know, amazing. Because the very first high quality film of a coronation is Queen Elizabeth's, back in the early 1950s. It's done by Pathé Cinema. And it's a beautiful thing to watch. I mean, the colours and the regalia and the whole pomp and everything. Well, now, for the first time in history, we now have large numbers of people who are esoterically educated. And suddenly we can start watching this in a way, and who knows, maybe this is part of the shift in consciousness too, that like what they called the profane in the past now actually have an insight to what goes on at the top. I'm going to be, I'm not a royalist, I'm not really interested in anything like that, but I'm going to be watching these funerals and these coronations with the fact that he'll be coronated on a stone that's supposed to be brought to Ireland from the Tuatha De Danann, isn't that enough, what more do you need,
Right, I'm not a royalist, but I did have a listen to what's going to happen next. And what they said was the Queen's going to be, she's up in Scotland, she's going to be going to some cathedral in Aberdeen. Then she's moving down very, very slowly. She's going to Buckingham Palace and then to Westminster to Lion State. In the meantime, Big Ears is going to be trucking about. Apparently he's going to Scotland first, then he's going to Belfast, then he's going to...
They're actually going to move her body around.
They're going to move her body around, right? She's in Scotland now, she's going in some cathedral in Aberdeen, then she's coming down, and what caught me attention was, it said, she's going to be transported on the royal train very, very slowly. Now, I didn't like the idea of that. So for me, and the fact that Big Ears is going to be moving all around the show to different parts like England, Scotland, Wales, Ireland, is he going to take with him to be distributed out to those different countries some kind of...
Well, if you like energy harvest, how you offset that is you get a heavy metal T-shirt saying Queen Corpse and dates like a tour. That's how you do that. There's a business opportunity out there for someone.
Yeah, I just kind of picked up on it, really.
Interesting.
That's spooky though, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's just like the sucking in the energy or something. Yeah.
Could the positions of the town create a sigil? Could the positions of the towns create a sigil?
Could well be, couldn't it?
That might be worth looking at.
Just making people sit on purpose, and then harvesting it,
Just to really answer somebody else's question about energies and what it feels like in these sites and things like that, Rory Duff is a geologist and he's measured not just in the UK and surrounding areas, all over the world. He goes all over the world. So if anybody's interested in measurements and the solar flares and the history about it, it's just very interesting guide.
Is that the Suspicious Observers channel?
No.
No, but I'm fascinated by that stuff as well. There's definitely something that we could use those solar flares as a kind of clock, a geological clock. And we may be able to predict when the next one is coming. Yeah.
He does, he does.
We're getting towards lunchtime. Hello.
Two more questions.
All right. This one is about Atlantis. Also, it's really nice to see all you guys in the flesh. But I was just wondering, I'm going to the Azores in a couple of weeks. I was just wondering what you guys know or have to say about any connection between the Azores and your understanding of Atlantis.
That's supposed to be the outpost of Atlantis.
I missed that one.
The Azores.
Asking about the Azores?
Oh yeah, definitely, absolutely. That would be the southern tip of it. Plato said that it was bigger than Libya and Asia Minor combined. Now Asia Minor is basically Turkey and a bit of Iraq today, but Libya on the time of Greece and Rome was the whole of North Africa. So if you were to take the whole of North Africa, Turkey and a bit of the Middle East and plop it in the Atlantic, you have a land bridge between the East and the West that would cover a huge area. Absolutely, the Azores is definitely on that, of course, yeah. Definitely.
Right, so Neil, thanks for the film. Just a question or a thought on the procession. The body's going Edinburgh, the Royal Mile, to the church, the cathedral there. And then, as been discussed, moving down to London and doing the processions in London. But this has happened before. The Eleanor Crosses all down through England. I forget where she died, but they travelled the body down through and ended up in Charing Cross, where you've got the cross there, and the measurement of London is directly from that cross down at Charing.
And I know all about that. Alistair Crowley said that Charing Cross Station was the magical gateway to London because of that alignment of crosses all the way up to the north of England. Going back to that's an interesting one because you can't get a lot of information on it. But it was almost like you entered London at that point in the Roman times, and there was a specific procession that went up to where does it end, Roger?
Charing Cross.
It goes from Charing Cross.
You know Charing Cross Station. There's
it's
a monument there. And
yeah.
They're in Bury St Edmunds.
It ends in the English Midlands somewhere, doesn't it?
And I've actually dowsed it. There's an energy line that goes right the way through.
Yeah, that's one we could look into.
Yeah, we definitely look into it. Yeah, I mean, it just shows, doesn't it? There's more proof that these positional ways they're really significant, aren't they? They're still today. You know, it means a lot to these so-called elite. I hate saying that word, but it just it's important, isn't it? It's an important thing. Anyway, I think we're going to have lunch because it's 5:02. So hopefully the shuttle will shoot up any second now, and we'll see you back in an hour. Okay? Don't forget to put the magnificent